Thank you, Anna, for coming here today. Oh my God, such an honor to have you here. I'm
Thank you,
excited.
Fabiano.
Okay, so to start, tell me who you are, where you're talking from, and a little bit of your career, what brought you here.
All right, I'm Anna Navarro Schlegel. I was born in Catalonia. I've lived most of my life in California, in the Silicon Valley. What brings me here is my friend Fabiano asking some really cool questions, and we're going to challenge Renato. And I hope to share a little bit of the trajectory that I had of owning a small agency to end up being a general manager for a Fortune 50 company.
Oh my God. Okay. Should we start with the questions? Do you want to talk about your trajectory now? Because you are the big shot of this
Whatever,
industry.
whatever will help.
Okay.
Whatever helps.
So tell me a little bit about your trajectory. Where you started as a company owner and you ended up being a VP of a big player in the industry. Tell me about that.
General manager. I went up from VP. So yeah, I started a small agency in San Francisco in 1992 that ended up doing really well. And because of that agency, I was hired to work for Cisco Systems. Because being in the Silicon Valley at that time in 1992, that's when all the excitement was happening. And because I had studied philology and I had my translating agency, Cisco Systems was looking for people to form their first translations team. The word localization did not exist.
Wow.
Yeah. So the first time I heard the word localization was from Michelle at Yahoo. And I was like, what is this thing? And she tried to explain it to me. I'm like, oh, sounds so scary. Yeah, but that's how I started. And then, the way people are like, how did you ended up making it so high up? Because we know it's 2% of women executives in the Silicon Valley, especially in Fortune 500, Fortune 50 companies is very, very difficult. How did I do it? Learning a lot, studying a lot, and using all the models that I saw from product managers, salespeople, CMOs, engineers, and I applied them all to my own team. If they talked about growth models, I was like, how do we relate localization to a growth model? If they talked about a product life cycle, I was like, what products are doing well in what countries? So we would map all of this. So I don't know, because I used to see the typical localization managers, but to me, localization was always about the business, That's why I was one of the first people to say, we're going to test MT and we're going to create our own machine learning capabilities. And that's why we automated everything very early on, or as early as technology was coming in, we would apply everything. One other thing that was very, very helpful was I studied telecommunications. So I was a linguist, first degree, second degree. I got a master's in linguistics in Berlin, third degree, telecommunications in the Silicon Valley. I thought that I would not be able to be a good technologist just by being a linguist. So I had to get really deep, and I studied during my stint at Cisco Systems, because just nothing would make sense to me of what they were talking about, networking and routers and submarine cables and stuff like that. So studying all of this has been very helpful. And then I spent 5 years at Stanford studying diversity and equality, gender studies. And then the last career that I did was at Santa Clara University next to my house, to get the actual certificate degree on how to run a US public corporation. So I went through that because having been at boards of nonprofits, especially women when we're like 45 and up, we're like, why are the guys in boards and why are we not in boards? So I got very involved with the Athena Alliance project, I ended up getting a degree from Santa Clara University on how to run a US public board. And that's why, this trajectory has been super helpful.
When you say public, it's not government. It's a company that
NetApp.
yeah, okay.
I could see that
option,
NetApp's board, Google's board, yes,
Okay.
anything that has gone out to the public, yeah.
Okay. I remember on and actually I'm meeting Scott earlier. Well, he's there. He's in the room. He's there in the room. So, but I remember one event that we did with Scott, Cleveland, maybe. You talked about, you were at that app and you talked about how you managed to bring internationalization into the discussions in the boardroom.
Yeah.
How you made internationalization a core part of the company, not an afterthought. What was the strategy? My memory is bad. Remind me what you did.
My goodness. So when I started at NetApp, I was coming in already from 3 or 4 other tech companies, and I was one person. I ended up being the vice president of the whole product life cycle. And I was one person, and I thought, okay, I'm going to grab an executive from marketing, executive from engineering, executive from customer support, sales. I'm going to tell them that I'm going to do an experiment. And I designed 8 sessions, and I told them every first Monday of the month, we're going to sit for 2 hours. And I created a global board for the company. They did not work for me. I was not even a director at that time. And I told them, tell me everything you know about global sales. Tell me everything you're doing for global marketing. Tell me everything we're doing for global support, for solutions, HR, legal. I had everybody sitting. And it was so fun because they had never talked together. And I'm like, okay, you're getting into Spain and Italy, but you don't have the legal stuff in Spanish and Italian. You guys talk. And so I created my own board, but on the other hand, I was connecting and improving the output for NetApp on how to go global. I was hired to take NetApp global.
So,
Yes,
so instead of trying to sell, your whatever your department was doing in terms of globalization, internationalization, whatever it was
I was
doing,
one person.
that was a single person department.
This was year 1. I was there for 12 years. So my first year was this.
And you grew to many people in your department.
1,700, yes.
But would you say that the strategy, if we could summarize, was it to orchestrate whatever global initiatives were happening in the company, but you centralized and you started making these people communicate?
I spent my first year like getting to know who was where. They were already giving me like, oh, you should manage the web team. And we were able to hire a couple localizers, but I was like, that's fine. They know how to do their job. I didn't go to manage localization or web teams. I told them, you guys are great. And one was Aldo Bermudez, who's now a big deal. So these people were already very good. And I spent time thinking for the company and how did we look outside to the customer. And then this was a lot of fun. They wanted to, then we created what we call like an executive board inside, although we became friends and stuff like that. They started to, why don't you come to our all hands? Why don't you come to our staff meetings? So a lot of evangelizing, year 1. Year 2, I guess I was able to start hiring people like Bridget O'Brien and Edith Vandermacher, all these people. I was like, okay, I need.
Nice.
Yeah. Sylvia Vari, I brought these folks. And at that time, Cisco was not in China. NetApp was not in China. We didn't have a big ranking in Japan. And so I was sitting in the CMO office. So I spent year 2 cleaning up, demand gen websites, all the marketing stuff. I got to know the head of sales, which was, SVP of sales. We became really good friends because I would always tell him like, all this stuff you're doing needs to be translated. And like, yeah. you know, always very friendly and asking a lot of questions. I had a very good mentor inside NetApp, Tracy Hansen, who used to say, just read, just learn, you know, how to be a good global business leader. And I took classes on speed reading, on speaking to executives. I took classes on asking good questions, on how to do elevator pitches and stuff like that. And she was very, very helpful in guiding me that way. In year 3, I guess we had done all we could in marketing, or we were connecting a lot of things already with the vice president of digital there. And then basically I went to each one of my friends and said, now we're going to globalize legal, now we're globalize HR. And each department had different systems, different languages. So that's when we came like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So it took a long time. You know, I always say that for me to have made it to where I made it took 12 years.
Wow. Okay.
You know, so you don't come into a place like NetApp, which my own business team, we were responsible for $6 billion, right? So it's a lot of product owners, it's a lot. Now, in the middle of all of this, one thing happened, which was brilliant. The then SVP of engineering saw what I had done in sales and marketing and HR, and he said, I want you to work for me. And this is George Kurian, who's been the CEO of NetApp for many years, probably the best CEO I've ever met. And I said, okay, but I need to bring my team. And he said, sure. When I tried to move my team, which was already 40, 50 people at that time, because we had linguists and we had QA managers, vendor managers, all of this, the CMO fought me really hard. And we had to negotiate who was coming over. Now, I went to the sales VP and I said, no, I need them all. I need them all, because 2 teams don't have the power of 1. So it was a struggle for probably 6 months. I was able to bring them all in. I fought the CMO at NetApp. I ended up getting my whole team in engineering. All of a sudden, we're in R&D. So here we come from the marketing mentality. We ended up in engineering. And he said, you know, Anna, here's 130 tech writers, and here's like several engineers, and here's the product managers you need to work with. So it was almost like starting all over again. One thing that was a lot of fun was I started traveling to Japan, because we opened the offices in Japan. And when I was there was a customer that ripped me apart already, because I was already a senior director at that time, and said, NetApp is never going to be successful in Japan because the user interfaces are in English. You're giving us the tech stuff, the info in Japanese, but it doesn't match, you know, what we need to install. I'm like, duh. So I went back to NetApp and said to engineers and the product leaders of these main products, these main pieces of software, we need to do this in Japanese. And they're like, no. So, Yang-Min Jeong.
No, because we don't have a budget, or because it's whatever. Yeah.
They can get it, like the typical US answer. Yeah. I always was like, no. Whenever anybody tells me no, I'm like, oh, big fat yes. So I talked to one engineer and I said, look, we're going to do one thing. We may get fired for this, but I want to make a point. We grabbed on-command system manager, which is the biggest dashboard that runs the software that powers ONTAP, which is 1 billion lines of code. And I said, let's localize the hell out of this piece of software. And we did it. We bifurcated the code without the product owner knowing. Kirk Lowe, hi Kirk. And we localized it into Japanese. We flew back to Japan. We showed it to Morita-san and many other people that had been begging for this. I came back to NetApp a month later, there's a company all hands, and the sales senior vice president, Tom Mendoza, Rob Salmon, sorry, who I had befriended when I was in marketing and sales, got on stage and said, I would like to give somebody an award. And he said, there's this woman who just gave us $60 million in 1 month. And I'm just listening. I didn't know it was me.
You had no idea.
Yeah, and he said the National Police Academy, Narita Airport, Fujitsu, just bought NetApp in Japanese for the first time.
Wow.
So Anna Schlegel, please come on stage. And I was like, so the guy that told me not to do it got so upset that I'm like, Rob, please make sure I don't get fired from this company. But it was fired almost by this much. But I made it a point, and other VPs in product came and said, I want my product in Japanese. Within 2 years, we went from being, I think it was number 10 in Japan to being number 1 in Japan.
Just because you did the obvious thing of localizing the product into Japanese.
And that's what made me a vice president.
There you go. Okay. So listen.
So it's taking a lot of risk. It's understanding your customers. It's I made you cry, huh? It's understanding your customers. It's taking a lot of risk and doing a lot of quiet work to make a point, because Yangmin and I almost got fired. And we got harassed big time too, which is a whole other story. But we made the point, and then George Curran was so happy, right? The CEO.
That's nice.
Now move forward a couple years, and he got me into the boardroom to explain this story. And he said, whatever you did in Japan, I want you to do it for China. This is why translation belongs in the boardroom. I did not know why he was asking me to do it in Chinese. He said it's a secret project, now I can tell it because it all came out.
Yeah.
But it was a very secret project. I worked with, the heads of tech pubs and engineering and product, and we chose what products, which were quite a long list of products. We localized everything. We prepared everything. And then he called me back and he said, I want you to go to China and be part of a joint venture exercise that we're going to do with Lenovo. So I started traveling to China to be part of a very small team to kick off what is today a third company, which we created in China. Again,
Okay.
all of these happened over the course of 12 years because of good stakeholder management, being really brave, learning how to be in a board, and all these classes.
This is amazing.
Little Anna from the mountains of Catalonia. Gotta be brave.
She made it there. She made it there.
I always thought, what's the worst thing that can happen? If you know it's the right thing to do, I'm not somebody that asks for permission much, you just do it and then you show it.
So the goal here is to inspire people in the room. And of course you just did it, or you always do it. You're so inspirational. It's incredible. I hope that they come up with beautiful ideas. I'll explain to them what
little by little. Who wants to play? Who wants to be your friend? Who's crazy enough, good crazy, to do little tryouts, right? Even if something is not localized or globalized, see if there is potential. Don't go and globalize something that is not,
right.
The market is not ready. There's not a team there to run with it, because I've made the mistake of globalizing websites or products,
They were
and then
not necessary.
the team didn't know how to run with it, didn't promote it well enough.
And again, the question, how did you make it a boardroom issue? Was it the revenue? Was it the bravery? Was it
It's
new
the growth.
markets?
It's the growth of the company. You have to think that these are businesses. It's not, there was a point I was like, oh my God, we're translating so many words. Wow, look at us. I was so wrong, right?
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't matter. It was learning the product life cycle and the growth model of the company. And I used to spend a lot of time with Sheila Aurora, who was the strategy head of NetApp, and I've done the same at Procore and other companies, but to ask, what are the next markets? What do you think? Where do we have a great country manager?
And
And
this, and another question that I wanted to ask, I was thinking before, how internationalized was NetApp at the time? Because I think when you went to Procore, you was kind of from scratch. Procore was a very US-centric company, as you mentioned.
every company I've
So-
started from scratch. Every company have been one person.
Okay.
Cisco, one person, NetApp, one person, VMware had a few people, VeriSign, I was one person. I'm always the person that goes, okay, here's what we need. Here's what we're going to do.
My
Procore
friend,
had a team of maybe 3 localizers and a couple product managers. There was somebody global infrastructure, but at Procore, I ended up being the general manager for anything that was international. So it was about, data centers and file storage locations around the world. It was not, localization was a small team.
okay. But you grew out of it. You grew out of, and you made it.
Well, when Procore came to get me out of NetApp, because I didn't want to leave NetApp, I spent a lot of time with the chief product officer and the CEO of Procore saying, this is how I work, this is how I see things, this is how I like to work. And if I come, Bridget comes. And if I come, I need Young Min as vice president of engineering. So not only did I come, I came with like
You came with a group, yeah.
Yeah, because they were very serious. Procore was pre-IPO. Procore knew that to make it post-IPO, you have to be
Go global. Yeah. It doesn't work anymore to be so local. And regardless of the US being the largest market in the world, it doesn't make any sense. You cannot play alone. You cannot play.
No. And my advice for people that want to get to that level of telling the company where to open offices, where to invest, what country managers to hire. You have to study strategy. You have to put yourself through a lot of business problems. Play the orchestra of what is keeping these business units from going from 3 billion to 4 billion to 5 billion to 6 billion. What does it take? It's a huge, huge orchestra. So you learn these big models of the product life cycle, of the product growth models, technology growth models, and you just start, because there's not a lot of people that like to do that.
I love that. This is exactly what I love to do. So if we're running out of time, but if you could, we're going to split the group here in 3 groups, and one is going to follow you. And if you could summarize in one sentence, this is how I did it to become a boardroom issue, and they are going to develop their own based on your ideas that you shared here. If you could summarize, we could have a title for this group, what would it be?
Align the company, take conclusions, and bring in a solution for a result that you want.
Beautiful.